So I love the work that I do. I love when people have that aha moment of, oh, this can be easier. Because I always
Yeah.
say, world is hard. You should get to come home to restore yourself. That's where we're supposed to fill up our buckets, right?
Hello and welcome to the And Both podcast. Here we are going to hear from moms and those in motherhood that are doing the thing that works for them. They are honoring themselves alongside the all-encompassing role and level of expectation that is motherhood. And we are going to hear from as many different people as possible in their own experience. So you can find people to relate to. You can hear stories that will make you laugh, make you cry, all of the above, and that we will come together as a community to support one another in a way that is holistic and honoring of the woman and the mother as a whole.
All right. Hello and welcome back to the In Both podcast. I am here today with Sara Kelly from Your Aligned Home. Welcome, welcome. Happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. Just so the listeners know what it took for us to get here, we had to jump through several technology hurdles to get here, but I love the expression. It's not a big thing, but it's a whole thing. I
Mhm.
learned that from somebody on Instagram, and I'm like, yeah, this is not like a big thing, but it's becoming a whole thing.
Yeah, it's becoming a process to just walk down the path to like say hello to another person on the big wide internet. I mean, yeah, the Zoom and recording and all of that stuff is like, I feel like that was the biggest speed bump for me in getting into podcasting was like, I feel like I'm one of those like I needed to be one of those like music producers, where they've got like the board of all the stuff on it. And I was like, oh, I could never. But then, then you get the technology and it's like, oh, it's so easy. It's like, yeah, but no. And learning as we go here. So I appreciate you
Yes.
um doing the dance with me so that we could get into this space.
Absolutely. If there's one thing I've learned as being a mom, it's learning how to pivot. It's
Mhm.
like no matter how well you plan, no matter what you expect, you like I just feel like that's being a mom is learning
Mhm.
how to pivot. And like, yeah, the whole time I was like, well, okay, I can try this. Okay, yeah, I can try this.
Mhm.
Okay, like it just you kind of just go to the next thing. I always wondered
Yep.
like why my mom knew everything. And then now that I'm a mom, I'm like, oh, you don't know everything. You just
Right.
learn how to navigate everything.
Yeah, you just like bounce down the course of life and you're like, well, I guess we hit something here. Oh, well, I guess this is working. So
Keep going. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So first off, I would love for you to tell everybody about this amazing, wonderful business and yourself and all of the things, and then we'll kind of dive in a little deeper.
Great. So I asking that whole like who are you thing, I love to do a little contrast so people can get like a full picture. So I
Yeah.
start off with I grew up in Nebraska, but I now live in upstate New York. And I love everything outdoors. If I have any spare minute in the day, I am outside doing something. I've always got dirt under my nails. I have a hard time wearing like quote unquote nice clothes because I'm always outside doing something that gets me
I love
to.
it.
But my work actually revolves around the inside of the home, which I love. I love the irony of that. And yeah, I'm, mom and a wife, and I've loved my dog. So all those kind of basics. And yeah, I counted them up. I've had over 20 different jobs, very different. So I've
Yep.
never had a career. Yeah, and now I'm a business owner and a mom and just kind of like rolling through life and just trying to enjoy every moment. There's no I used to hate that expression, or not, I don't like the word hate. I used to despise that expression. It's not the destination, it's the journey.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, oh, I get it. Oh, I get it. Oh, I get it. Yep. There's no getting there to feel that. It's feeling that while you're getting, well, there's no there either. That's like
Yeah,
such
you're
a
getting
moving,
somewhere.
that's such a moving target.
Hmm.
So I really just enjoyed. I'm deep in my 40s, and I just love that feeling of I don't care about that anymore. I don't
Hmm.
care. Like I'm gonna do my thing. Like outside expectations, nah. Like I don't. I mean, I still dance a little bit, but I love the freedom of getting older and just like sloughing off all of those
Right.
external pressures.
It's like the other end of the spectrum. Like when you're a teenager, you're like, oh, I don't care, but you really care. You care a lot. And it's so important that everyone thinks you don't care, but you care so much. And then when you get to your 40s, you're like, oh, yeah, yeah, I really don't care. And you can't make me care because I have gone through decades of pivots and running up against things and trying to figure things out and big problems and little problems and terrible problems and all of that stuff, and now it's like I really don't care, and this is a magical thing.
It's so magical. I remember in my 20s, my first job out of college, I worked with this woman. She was she was probably in her early 50s, career, had a kid, all that stuff. And I remember her distinctly saying, "You hit 40 and you stop caring. You stop well,
Hmm.
not stop caring, you stop giving a crap what other people think." And I was in my 20s and I thought, "Oh, that'll never happen to me." Like, "Oh my gosh, like what is
Hmm.
that?" Like, yeah, and now that I'm here, I'm like, "Oh, she was so right." And I love it. I never want to take this off. I wouldn't go back to being a teenager for anything.
Oh, you couldn't pay me to go to middle school or anything. My
No.
oldest is going to middle school next year, and I'm just like, I just want to wrap you in bubble wrap because you are so sweet, and it's just like I think the function of elementary school is to get them as like boosted up as possible to like go through middle school as unscathed as possible and then grow from there, like high school and out. I just feel like middle school is this gauntlet. No matter what, no matter
Yeah.
if you have the best time ever, it's just like it's a converging of many, many storms that are going on.
Oh yeah. And I remember my sister's older than I am. She has four children. And I remember her distinctly saying when I was in the throes of, like having an infant and a toddler, she's like, when they're little, it's all about the physical needs.
Hmm.
Fed, diaper, bath, all that stuff. And she's like, as they get older, it's more and more about the emotional needs and supporting them in the non-tangibles. And it's, yeah, as we're getting closer to middle school, my son will be in middle school next year. I'm like, oh gosh. Some days I kind of want to go back to like cleaning up poop and vomit. I'm like, well, that was like a very defined, like you clean up the poop, you can see it's done. Like with this
Right.
stuff, it's like it's so amorphous and it's
Hmm.
so you just keep throwing those pebbles in the pond going, I hope this is making a difference. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like we'll know in 10 years.
Hmm. Yeah, and when you have like it's that meme with the lady that has like all of the like crazy math overlay where she's like, "Wait, what?" Like I feel like sometimes like kids walk in the door and I'm like, "Okay, what are the 97 possibilities that led to where we're at right now? And like, can I eliminate 95 of them like based on a snack, like are your clothes uncomfortable, like all of that stuff, and like I default back to when they were little but now they're big, like I'm like, are you hungry? And they're like, mom, I can like feed myself, and I'm like, no, 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 my bag of tricks has to last for a little while longer, like we've got, because I might be hungry and I'm like, I'm nearly 40 as well. And sometimes I forget that I'm hungry. So I need to like parent myself. Do you have to go to the bathroom? And they're like, stop. I'm like, okay. I guess I'll just be over here. You help me. Help me, help you.
Help me
Ugh.
help you. Oh my gosh, it's so true. Help me help you. Yeah, I always laugh with people about there's no way of explaining parenting to somebody in a way that is understandable. Like you just said, like trying to navigate that situation, like the mental gymnastics of that and then like yeah, you're dealing with your own I'm tired or my bucket's not full or you're juggling your own stressors. It's just like
Right.
the complexity of parenting. And if you want, I mean, you can do, my friend used to joke, it's easy to be a bad parent. Like, yeah, if you want to just not worry or care, I mean, that you could do
Mhm.
that too. But yeah, if you really care about the outcome of things, it's
I know. I missed the track for Shameless, that show, and I've watched like a couple of episodes, and I'm like, oh, that speaks definitely to that of like just disappearing and being like, yeah, fend for yourself. Good luck in life. So, so speaking of people coming home, you have a whole business that I think is something that everybody needs because it is something that we definitely don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to as a potential reason for why we feel the way that we do. So, you have Your Aligned Home. Will you tell everybody about it? And then everybody will go look it up and everyone will be like, oh my God, this makes sense. But tell everybody about Your Aligned Home and what you do and people you work with and all of that.
I think the origin story helps explain it. Yeah, because when I tell people what it is, they immediately go to the closest thing was like, oh, you're an organizer. No, it's a part of it, but that's not what it is. So I'll go to the origin story, which is when we moved to upstate New York, my son was really little. It was one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm going to get a job just to pay daycare to watch my son. It didn't kind of make sense. So as my son started preschool and kindergarten, I just thought I'll just work when he's at class and that's it. Like I'll just flex my schedule. And so I started by working in the homes of women who were overwhelmed. It was usually 2-parent household with kids. Both parents were working. And I always said, if you had a second person, like you had two of yourself, like what would you ask your second self to do? Just give me that list. And so I would go in and I loved it. I felt like a little magical fairy. I would come in and I would put away the holiday decorations and I clean out the fridge and get ready for a house guest to come. And I loved it because it filled up people's buckets and I just loved it. But what was really cool is I spent all this time in people's homes and I got to see homes as organizations. So I got to compare and contrast. Okay, these things are similar between all these homes. Okay, these things are different. Okay, this person has this hiccup, but this person doesn't have that hiccup. What's different? Like this person does this really easily. Why is that? And it was like this, I didn't realize I was basically doing research for what is now Your Aligned Home. I had no idea. And then I also noticed something that was very common that was heartbreaking, which was all the women, because all of my clients are women, even though I don't say I only work with women, women are the ones who come to me because they're the ones who are overwhelmed. And I noticed all the women assumed that they were failing and everyone else had it figured out as far as cooking meals or getting laundry done or having their house picked up. Every single person, no matter what it looked like to what degree. And then every single woman I worked with had some area of genius that they planned a birthday party really well, or they were magical at preparing these excellent dishes from scratch. But they assumed, oh, if I do this easily, everyone else does this easily.
Yeah.
And I always joke, it was like I was behind the curtain and I'm like, no, can I let you in on a secret? Everyone feels that way.
Right.
And it was amazing. And it helped me because I felt the same way. I mean, I was not immune to that. And so from working in all these homes and doing all this, I just kept thinking, I feel like I can help people before it gets to this point. And one of my original names for the business was actually Upstream Solutions, because I was like, no, let's go before things get uncomfortable. Let's go farther up. Because I was always coming in at like this tension point with people. So I had the idea, and I feel like it's so similar to your work as an OT. I loved when you said you find that friction point.
Yes.
And you try to find out what are the tools to overcome that within your capabilities. And that's what I do. Somebody joked, it's almost like I'm a private investigator or like a detective. Because sometimes people don't know where it is. All they know is they walk in their homes and it feels horrible and I don't know why. And so I ask a lot of questions. I'm just figuring out how the house functions, how the house flows, who does what goes where, what are the expectations of the house. And so sometimes it's helping people figure out where is that tension point. And then once we've identified either the big one or maybe a couple little ones, then we start talking about solutions. What does that look like? Is it a matter of asking for help from your family, hiring a third party, eliminating an expectation on yourself? Like, where can we do this? So we come up with solutions. Sometimes people know exactly where their tension point is, and so we can dive right in and start to unravel. So I love the work that I do. I love when people have that aha moment of, oh, this can be easier. Because I always
Yeah.
say, world is hard. You should get to come home to restore yourself. That's where we're supposed to fill up our buckets, right?
Right.
And if you come home and you're just yelling, pulling out your hair, frustrated, shoes are everywhere, laundry's never done, and you come home and you're more exhausted, how are you going to then go back out in the world and do your whole day over again? And so one of the things I say over and over in my work is it's 50% about the stuff and it's 50% about the emotions, because we want that home to feel good, which means it needs to function smoothly.
Yeah.
So as you can see, I get really passionate talking about my work. I love lifting people up. I love helping find solutions. And that's my work. Yeah.
I love the idea. And I think too, like when we spent so much time in our homes, is I really feel like people had this emerging awareness because for so long, I mean, I had really young kids prior to COVID, but they were just starting to get into the activities and stuff like that. So we were spending less time in our house because we were always on the go, going here, there, and everywhere, right? So like you want to be home and when you're home, you want to like be rested and relaxed and all of those things. But for a long time, our house turned into like a drive-through. It's like you come home, you bring the groceries, you have the laundry, you do the things and the things, and then we just get ready to go back out. But once we were home for a long time, it's like, okay, let's figure out how these things need to function better. So I just think like it's so timely in the discussion of like I guess I just think that maybe people did not have as much awareness about how much of an impact that had. You just think like everything is so busy and everything is so this and this, but that when you see for a fact when you are in that place, like this doesn't feel good, and like to feel like, well, it doesn't feel good, but this is how it's supposed to feel. So the fact that like you've gone through and you've done this research and you have met with people and you are, I think, it's 50% emotion, it's 50% stuff, but it's also slam another 50% in there, which doesn't add up math wise, but it's it's the idea of comparison that is so crushing for people. I just finished reading Sarah Peterson's Momfluenced, sitting on my desk because I have like all these quotes to go through and pull out and stuff like that. But it's that idea, right, of like people are trying their best. They're trying to do the right thing and whatever that is to them. And they're trying to feel that way, and they're trying to create that feeling that they get through seeing stuff online, social media, going to someone's house, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, well, if I can just make it look like that, or if I can just get to that point, then it's going to fix all that stuff. But what you're saying and what you're doing is let's figure out you first. Let's look at you and then go out versus out and then change everything about you, because people aren't going to change. We like what we like. We don't like what we don't like. And how do you align? Love it. How do you align your home with yourself? I think it's brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah. And you brought up so many good points. I mean, first of all, yeah, it's not a one size fits all solution.
Yeah.
I mean, when I read these like little snippets, which I get, that's how it's not even magazines anymore, but media, like the sound bites, the
Hmm.
clicks, do this, do these 5 things, blah, blah, blah. It's like, No, you have no idea what's going on in that person's life. And then they
Yeah.
think if they try those 5 things and it doesn't work, then they feel like a failure. And it's like, no, that solution, you didn't fail the solution. The solution failed you. That's not what you need. And that's why, again, I love coming in and people are like, well, I tried that and I tried that and nothing works. I'm like, no, that's so great that you tried all those things. That just means those aren't the solutions for you. Let's keep going. And again, that expectation, it's amazing where we are now. I mean, if you think back to our grandparents' generation, it was very traditional. You knew somebody was at home doing all the things, keeping the house. Like there was always a role of a home manager, although it had many different titles over
Yeah.
the years. But now we're all doing all the things. We're
Hmm.
all working. We're all running to activities. We're all volunteering in our community. We all want to be fulfilled ourselves. And like, I feel like it's one of those things where everyone wants the house to be on autopilot and it's just not an option.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be stuck holding it. Nobody.
Right.
And like, and societally, we still have this imprint that it is the woman's job. And the women carry this guilt, which I've learned, and I just find it so interesting. It's really a holdover from Victorian era because there was this whole thing with religion and godliness is next to cleanliness, which is a phrase a lot of people know.
Hmm.
And women where have this pressure. If your home looks clean, if your kids are clean, if everything's well organized, if your home is impeccable, you are holy. You're worthy. You're like, that's where that competition came from.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, oh no, oh my gosh. Like I get it. I get it.
Right.
And that whole momfluence, like social media, looking at pictures of things, we are still comparing ourselves and still feeling crappy that somebody else is doing whatever. And it's like I always come back to like your neighbor's resources are different than yours. The spoon. Have you heard of spoon theory? You worked in OT, you might be familiar with spoon
Yeah.
theory.
Not sure. Run
So
the.
it started in the chronic illness realm, which I have a friend who was on the podcast, which I'll tell you about, and she has chronic illness, so she introduced it to me. You might wake up with 5 spoons. It's like an energy tally. And it
Oh,
might
yeah,
take
yeah.
you 4 spoons just to get to breakfast. And then you, with chronic illness, have to know how do you use that one final spoon for the rest of your day. And so I like to compare that with managing your home. Well, so and so always has their holiday decorations up early. Their kids are always whatever, whatever, whatever. It's like, you don't know. You don't know. Are they paying somebody to do the decorations? Do they have all of their family in town and they're helping with childcare? Like, you just don't know what somebody else is dealing with or benefiting. Like, that's why I'm like, no, you just can't compare. You
Yeah.
never know what's going on with somebody else's life.
I feel like that there needs to be a billboard like every 12 feet because it's true because when it comes to this comparison and this idea of like there part of that comparison, there's two pieces. One is if we're so busy comparing all of this stuff that like truly doesn't matter, we can't all get on the same page about things like, you know, the rest of the way that women exist in the world or are told they can exist in the world or all of that stuff, right? So if like we keep fighting to make sure that somebody has the cleanest living room, how are we really taking on equal pay and a whole host of things? That's a rabbit hole that I would swim laps in happily. The other part too is like because there is such this comparison strategy and this like only showing the good side and only putting out the things that like show how easy it is that we're all collectively doing a disservice to ourselves and each other because if we just assume that everyone else is having the easiest time and if you are a person that benefits from help in any way, shape, or form, but you don't share that with the world, that's what creates these silos of like, if you look like you have all of your stuff together and you don't really have all of your stuff together, you've got to actually climb out of your own silo and wave your flag and say, I'm actually having a really hard time here. And there's just not that option and that opportunity to do that so long as we continue to exist in the like everything looks great. The forward facing part of my life is immaculate. Everything's white and marble and like, shades of neutral. However, there's a literal dumpster fire going on behind me, but like the front looks pretty. So how are we ever going to get to a space where people exist in true community if we don't talk about that part?
Well, yeah. And that again, like when I had that opportunity to work in people's homes and I got to see the shiny front facing
Yep.
and I got to see the chaos that they were actually frustrated with behind. And that was the like, oh, we're all dealing with this.
It's a
All,
thing.
it's a thing. And yeah, I so agree about taking down that facade. Like let's all stop competing unknowingly with one another. I've started this movement where I'm like, let's stop apologizing for the state of our home. When people
Yeah.
come over, excuse the mess. I went on a road trip in my 20s and I stayed, oh my gosh, 20 plus homes. I stayed with people all over, friends, relatives, sometimes strange, like friends of friends. Every single person when I walked in, oh, please excuse the mess. Every single person. And it was to varying degrees of what you would call messiness. And I was like, this is a universal thing that people feel. And I come back to the home is for living, not staging. When you see a magazine picture, a Pinterest picture, like that's a great inspiration, but it's a snapshot in time. We are living in our homes. If it works for you, it works for you. If somebody wants to make a judgment when they walk in your house, maybe you don't want to be friends with that person.
Maybe don't invite them over because I mean, really, if your home is supposed to be your safe space, your comfortable space, but you have that feeling of like, oh, this person is going to have something to say about, I feel like I need to preemptively apologize for the state of my home. It's like, why am I having this person be in my space? Why am I opening up this part to that?
But we all have to do it. We get to stop judging others for their home because we don't know what they're going through. If we do it out loud or like in our minds. And we also get to stop the facade.
Yeah.
Like I have people coming for Thanksgiving. And last year, the husband, he just likes to joke. He was not authentically, he didn't care about my basement, but he gave me a hard time about my basement because he knows what my work is. And it's an unfinished basement. It's part storage. It's part workout room. It's part where my husband works on projects. It's part, furnace. It's all the things. And he gave me a hard time about it. And so like I actually had this like knee jerk, like, oh, I should pick it up before they come. And then I thought, no, it works for me. It works for me. It's not draining my energy. It's serving its purpose. And I do clean it up in January when the days are so short that all you do is sit inside your house. So I'm like, no, he doesn't. And if it bothers him, which it doesn't, I would be like, yeah, not your problem. And it's not my problem.
Or just
because it's
don't
not a
go in my
problem.
basement, right? Like, I'm sorry, we're not going to entertain in the cellar. Like, the turkey will not come down to the basement this year. So sorry. The tour ends here. Thank you.
But really checking in with yourself. Where are my resources today? Where are my priorities? And there's such a delineation between, and this is where I'd love to work with women around the emotional component. Am I doing it because it's going to make me feel better? Do I want my kitchen cleaned up because then I will have a clear mind to function? Or am I cleaning it up because I feel societal pressure and somebody's going to judge me? Like, because some people say, and I agree, oh, if my house is picked up and clean, I function better. Great. Absolutely. Let's make it so that is an attainable goal for you. And that might mean getting rid of a bunch of stuff so you have less stuff to maintain. Great. But don't do it because you think, I have to. The society expects me to. Like it's supposed to be shiny. It's like, make sure your intentions are lining up with your own expectations.
Yeah, I think that's so important too. I mean, it's also like it's this weird idea of like my house has to be clean or my house has to look like this certain way. And it's like, how often is the person that you're concerned about picking your house up for going to just stroll in the front door? You know what I mean? It's like this like lingering cloud. Is it really a thing or is it a thing?
Mhm.
And let's tease apart why that's happening. So what does it look like for you? Do you go into homes and you meet with people and do that? So what is the process that you go through like when you have a new client?
Well, so I can actually do it because I developed this during the pandemic. I can actually do it virtually and in person. In
Love
person
it.
is more impactful because there is just such a different feeling to it. But it does start out the same. The first appointment is always information gathering. I mean, it is just the how many people in your house, how many animals, day to day. It is really just getting a full picture of the operation because I always say a home isn't like it's like a nonprofit organization. Like there's unpaid employees
Yep.
and you may not be generating, it's you're not producing a product other than like how you feel when you go out in the world. But so I'm really just learning about your organization from the inside out.
Mm.
And then if they know what their pain point is, then we can focus in right there. If they don't know the pain point, that's just part of the discovery process of really digging down and also figuring out which are the bigger battles. When there's two adults, you always find the landmines of like, okay, well, we're not going to go head on with that one. Let's
Right?
let's back burner that one because that's going to involve a lot more discussion. So kind of figuring out like where you can maneuver things. And then once there is, depending on what it is, some things are much more contained, like defined, a closet, a room. Sometimes it's more of a system that needs to be kind of overhauled. But whatever it is, I come up with a plan. I can see you've told me the end point. This is what I want. I don't want this. I want this. So I've got the beginning and the end. And then
Mm.
I come up with a loose framework of steps. And it's a combination of things that need to be done, such as deciding what I want to keep, what I want to get rid of, or deciding, like taking actual steps. And sometimes it's a matter of buying tools. Like, oh, if you could see all this easier, like get this organizational tool so you can see this. And then
Yeah.
once that's in place, let's uncover the next layer. So sometimes it's purchasing items that will be helpful or finding items from the house. Sometimes it's just doing like some legwork. And some clients, I can give them the assignment and then they'll do it on their own. Sometimes we need to do it together, just depending
Hmm.
on where their comfort level is. And so we keep going. And then as we go with the steps, sometimes we have to tweak and adjust to that end goal. Like, oh, I thought it was going to go this way, but now we need to focus on this to get to that end goal. And then we just kind of keep going until we get there. And again, depending on how small or large or, concrete or nebulous it is how long the process takes.
Yeah.
And it's great because everybody who comes to me, it's a variety. It's no two cases are the same. Sometimes it's people just can't see the solution for whatever reason. That's just like, I just can't see it. And I come in and I'm like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, that's all I needed. They just needed me to tell them the steps and they go off and running. Some people have never been taught these life skills. And it's like, I'm actually teaching them how to manage a home while we're solving a problem. And
Yeah.
then some people, a lot of my clients have executive functioning disorder. And so some people, it's really an uphill battle to follow through with some of these things. So each case is unique. And it's again, back to that, it's not a one size fits all. I work with each client individually, figure out what they need.
I love that I feel like it's so important to have it be to point out that, it's not typically a one thing, typically not a one thing. It's like a layered situation. So if you have somebody that's got, like having my husband always jokes that like it was always the best when I was pregnant because I'd like just start throwing things out. I was like there like I know that there's a baby coming home. I know that like we have to get ready for this. Like all of this stuff just became unimportant, unnecessary, like see you later. And like, he'd come home and there'd be like garbage bags for like donation or resale or whatever, whatever it is. But I'm like, we don't need this stuff. Like things become very clear. Because I think too, what happens is like when you have something like a big life event like that, and especially like you're working with people with families or people that are like bringing lives together and things like that, is that like the way that one person has done it and the way that the other person has done it can create that perfect storm of like, well, I thought you were going to handle this and I thought you were going to handle this. And then that's when you run into those landmines or those like, I expect you to do this, I expect me to do this, and all of that communication is messy. And then that really just builds the like, it's like the beaver dam, right? So like you can come in and having a completely outside perspective, be like, I'm just gonna pull this twig right here and look at that, there's water flowing through. Then I'm gonna pull this one and like tease it apart versus like, the Elmer Fudd like dynamite the dam kind of situation where you're just like, no, problem solved. Because what's going to happen is it's all going to just gather up again and move along.
Oh yeah, and you touched on such a great point. Transition times, bringing a baby home for the first time, two people moving in together,
Hmm.
or somebody leaving. Like there's so many, like I said, it's an organization. Think of any organization. When you change an element, everything else functions differently, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, especially with your homes, because everybody wants an autopilot. You don't address things, right? And it's not just, I thought you were going to take care of this. It's we have two different ways we want to take care of it. We have two different
Yes.
expectations of how things should be. And ideally, I would work with people as they moved in together, before they moved in together, but we're humans and we respond to discomfort. So I'm usually coming in when things have peaked and people are ready to put money into this.
Yeah.
So prevention is so much easier, right?
It's so much cheaper too because you're really paring
Oh,
it down as you go.
it is. And I always tell clients too, because people get like really, there's this emotional trajectory that's just very predictable. People will bring me in, they'll get really excited. And I say, yep, you're going to get really excited because you see the potential. But you
Yep.
have to remember, we're trying to use an existing system and create a new system at the same time. We're trying to use it, undo it, and create a new one. And I'm like, it is a mountain of mental and physical energy. And
Hmm.
I'm like, you're gonna dip, you are gonna wane before we get to the finish line because it's tough.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but we have to keep going. And I mean, I've seen it over and over. It's just like,
They're like, no, come on.
I'm like, this is why things get like this, because it's a bit of a drag, man. Like, I'm gonna be honest. Like,
Hmm.
some people love doing all this stuff, and most people don't. Like the
Hmm.
whole processing, the whole doing it's a lot. And I have sympathy for everybody. It is a lot, and
Hmm.
I wish it was easier. And I wish we were all given these tools to prevent this stuff from getting so complicated. But we are where we are, and I love what I do. So
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, they have I love the term home CEO that you use. And I think it's so important because really our homes function like businesses. Like, my own stuff, all of the dovetail stuff started because it was like everything, I mean, it's a combination of everything we talked about. Like I'm no better at taking care of organizing my house and all of that than my husband. It's for whatever reason, it all just falls into one, and all the products that are out there are for one person, and they all happen to have inspirational quotes and flowers and like, social media pages that are telling you that like you're doing a really good job if you buy this, your problem is this and our product is the only solution that solves that problem and things like that. And it's like, well, how do we collaborate? Like, how do we put everything out in one section so that everyone has a chance to to pull out information and everyone has a chance to participate, because I do think that even in our best version of ourselves, it's so hard to go through generations upon generations upon generations of women at home, and their responsibility is to do this, this, and this. But now you get into like, women in the 80s were like, you can have it all, but you have to do it all. And so it's still like the tools and the strategies and the things like that that are still that we want our houses to be automated because we want to have a career, because we want to do things differently, because, or even if we don't want to have a career, because we don't want to be the person standing there holding the bag for everybody else all the time. We got to be able to like shovel it off or pass the joy around for everyone else to participate in. But we just keep getting pigeonholed in this, like, no, it's just for you. And so like opening up these conversations, can you imagine like if two people they were moving in together and they called and they were like, hey Sarah, we're moving in together, we understand that this is a big transition and we know like we've never lived with other people or whatever, can you come and help us? Like, if I was you, my jaw would hit the floor, because that's a level of self-awareness that is just beyond.
Well, and again, it goes back to, I have this line where I say, like, it's not just about where the shoes, do you have food? It, like, again, you bring those two people, they're about to move in together, and they don't realize the importance of a well-functioning home for the survival of their relationship. How many relationships deteriorate or are not thriving because it's just resentment? They never do this. I always do this. They do, it's like and it's like, oh no, this is so much more than the tangible, is there food in the cupboard? This is the foundation that everything rests upon. But nobody wants to be left holding that bag, because seeing it as a woman's job, a low pay, like, think about, like, it's said with such like snarkiness about, like, cleaning is so minimized, cooking, like everything has gotten, I don't like kind of the distaste people have for the mundane chores. And it's just like, nah, it's gotta be done. Like, you drive your car. Do you have a chauffeur? No, you drive your own car. You have to manage your home. And the reason the home CEO origin, again, it's manyfold, but it was, your home is an organization. And I was seeing the woman, and I don't want it to be a gender thing. So that's why like home CEO is kind of neutral. But it's like, if you have one person at the top, if you have a CEO of a company, they don't do everything. They're not the janitorial and the cooking and the financing and the marketing and the, like, no, they make sure everyone knows how to do their jobs and that they're doing their jobs. And then the CEO has their own job as well. And you have to make sure everyone's trained, has the supplies they need, and then you need benchmarks. Take out the emotion, make it very structured as much as you can. There's always going to be emotion. And then I'm really excited. I'm creating the Home CEO program, which is a course you can watch, because we weren't all given these skills.
Right.
And the hope is that the next generation, if you have whatever genders, they all have the same tools and there's no gender expectation.
Right. Like, can we do that?
And that's, I mean, I don't know if I can do it, but that's what I'm hoping. And I'm going to create a Home CEO junior program specifically for younger kids, because teach the boys how to clean a toilet, just like you're teaching the girls. Teach just a child. Every child is going to have to manage their space, whether it's in a college dormitory, an apartment, living with multiple people. It doesn't matter what the dynamic is. Everyone needs these life tools. I say it's like learning, again, going back to cars, because driving a car is pretty ubiquitous. Like, when you take driver's ed to learn how to drive a car, if you're having a problem, and if you're having a problem with your car because you don't know, like, I don't know how to fix this, it's making a noise, you go to a mechanic, you ask questions. But there's such this like feeling and stereotype around home management.
Yeah.
Like, it's essential, but it's not respected. Right.
Right. Because it's unpaid. Right. And like, we live in a society that values paid work over everything else. It's that,
But even if you pay somebody, look at how much we pay people to clean at like a hotel room. Look at how much we pay people to like make our food at a fast food joint. Look at how much we pay. Like, just if you look in the society, like where that even like people who get paid to do those jobs.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like there's still, yeah, it's, but we get to, I'm excited as women. I think we get to stand up, our generation, and say,
Yes.
nah, no more. I'm not passing this on. It feels like crud. It needs to change. I'm not perpetuating this. And it's
Right.
exciting and
Right.
hard.
Like an impossible feeling. But it's like it's the same like along those lines. Like if I am the one who is responsible, and in my house I am not because of everything that we've talked about. But if I, as an example, am responsible for the cooking and the cleaning and the grocery shopping and the managing everything and none of that is paid, right? So it's not worth anything. All of a sudden, you start pulling people in, and it's pay someone to clean your house. You pay for groceries to be dropped off at your house. You pay for, after school programs, you're paying out all these things. It's like the money that is going out for all of that stuff then makes it a legitimate thing. However, if I am the one doing it, why does it not have the same legitimacy? So it's just this like it's a crazy upside down kind of situation in the world.
Oh, yeah, it is. And it's fun. I think it's fun and exciting that we're at a point in time where we can examine it and
Yeah.
we can ask questions. I think previous generations, there was not as a much, I mean, you'd be called a witch. You'd be like, there wasn't an opportunity to really question things like we have today. So I think it's exciting. And I think it's exciting. And it's tough.
Yeah,
But
it feels like a turn is actually on the horizon for sure.
yes. And yeah, I'm excited to get, you know, down the road and look back and then see like, okay, what's changed? I mean, I think things have already changed a lot. Really, from watching my mom work, she ran her own business and did everything in the home. Like I'm seeing things change.
Yeah, I think that, our generation it benefits from the compound of the work of others, not necessarily our grandparents or definitely not our great grandparents, but the tide of I don't love this. And, we're kind of I feel like we're the whiplash of the you can have it all as long as you do it all. It's like, well, why am I more qualified to figure out when we're out of diapers than you? Like, what makes that? Because you don't want to do it? It's like, why don't we come up with a system? And that's what I think is so important. And that needs to be shouted from the rooftops is like, if you have a system, like with a company, people learn how to use a system. People learn how to participate in their own way with that because there is a set of expectations and there is a strategy and there is a procedure that is easy for people to learn because that's what separates it from being a quote unquote woman's problem, right? It's like we carry all this stuff in our head of like remembering what is running out here and what size shoes this kid wears and all of that stuff. But if we have a place to put that, then that means that it no longer lives inside of us because then it is invisible. And now it exists in a visible space where people can say, I can do that. And it's that idea like we are creating a pathway for it to be normal for our kids to grow up with being able to have that.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, going back to that at the very top, I said I've had over 20 different jobs. I've worked inside a variety of organizations.
Yeah.
And when, again, working in people's homes, I saw the similarities. Every organization needs this and like that structure you were talking about, the systems. the scaffolding. Yeah, it doesn't need to all be inside one person.
Yes.
It can exist externally to hold up the entire house.
Yeah.
So
This is like when I met you online and then I was looking at your website. I was like, oh my God, there's another person out there that believes the same things I do. I have to meet this woman. I have to meet somebody else who understands that, like, if we have a structure in place in order for this to happen, that we will actually be able to affect change. If we actually have the tools out there that we need to do that, we will, this is what we need. This is the missing piece. And so, like, continuing to spread that message of, here's how we're going to actually make it better and here's how we're going to make it different. Like, being able to say your home as an ecosystem needs to improve, all the way down to, like, how are you going to plan these meals and how are you going to, how does all of that happen? Like, I feel like you and I are coming at it from from the opposite ends of the same spectrum, and I just love it. I just love everything that you're doing.
oh, thank you. And you as well. I mean, I was so excited when I talked to you. I mean, it was a mutual respect. Yeah. When I heard you talk about it's uncovering that friction point, and I was like,
Yeah.
yes, you see it the same way. Yeah. I had the exact same thrill. And I think it's exciting, like the expression of be the change you want to see. We
Right.
saw something that wasn't working well. We said, what can we do about this?
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's really exciting. And yeah, if if we can help people enjoy their day to day just easier,
Yes.
smoother, it's like, yeah, let's do that. Let's help one another. Let's all use our areas of expertise to get to that point
Right. To
instead
all
of
solve the same.
cutting each other down and trying to
Yes.
somebody scramble to the top of the pile. Everything in my life is perfect. And I can say that because everyone else is failing. It's like, no,
Right.
let's all like lift as we rise. Let's all use our
Yes.
areas of expertise and all walk a
Let's all
little bit easier.
get out
Yes.
of our own silo, for sure. So on the flip side, when you are not out there helping people do the things, you are outside.
Yes.
You are, what are the things that fill your bucket? Because again, I met with I was talking to another therapist an episode or two ago, and it's like it's the same question. You are doing something that pours out a lot. And you alluded to that in terms of the amount of energy that goes into each of these processes, walking people through that. So what do you do to fill your bucket on the back end of this?
Yeah. So easily attainable items. Like I said, anything outdoors. I'm such a bird nerd. I could watch birds all day.
God, I love it.
I love to be around trees. Like if I can go walk in the woods or just take a walk with my dog or do like, I'm always moving sticks. We have like around 2 acres of property. I'm always moving branches and sticks and managing some kind of tree form in some way. But bigger than that, I actually on Friday just had my recital, you could call it, for I took up African drumming a year ago when this is such
Cool.
a quintessential mom story. We moved to this village when my son was 3, and I saw this storefront with these African drums, and I instantly thought, I want to do that. But every year,
Yeah.
oh, not this year, not this year, not this year. Oh, maybe some other time, maybe some. And she was actually my son's piano teacher. So I saw her all the time and I was on her email list. And then last year there was this email of, I'm doing this winter promotion, buy a drum, get a lesson. And I went, what am I waiting for? I've been saying
Yeah.
8 years. So I got the drum. It felt like it was always mine, like it was always meant to be. And I started drumming, I took classes, and I've met amazing people, and I love it because when I'm drumming, I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm in the moment. And if you've never been to an African drumming circle, it is so joyous. It is so moving. It is unlike any other experience. I think music is just such a great shaker up of things. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
I love that it's like an activity that's a very present thing. Like you can't like check your email and drum. You can't get sidetracked on, oh, but I'll be there in a minute. I just need to do this one thing, typically probably for somebody else before I get to do this thing for me. It's like, this is my time, this is my space, this is my thing for me. But it's also too important, like, if you have, it's hard to do if you have a 3-year-old. And I think that is another message that gets sort of tucked in there without necessarily getting tucked in there, is like, your season of life right now looks very different. And so your capacity, energy wise, emotion wise, time, schedule, all of that is so different. And so being able to help people go through the process of creating change at home, that has evolved as your own opportunities have evolved, like with school and things like that. And I think that's a really important thing that you definitely talk about in the origin story. But I just want to highlight that because we're in all these different seasons that evolve over time, and that
Yeah, and
one of it.
I do want to point out too, I mean, I can still remember moving here and my son was 3 and I hadn't read a book since he was born, and I was very adamant about joining a book club to start reading again. But I had to learn to make that space. Nobody was going to give me that time. I found a babysitter. I found that, like, and that's what I tell a lot of women, especially with their homes. It's learning to throw your elbows up.
Yes.
Nobody is going to, for the most part, I shouldn't say nobody, for the most part, yeah, you got to claim, I want this time. I want this space. I want this for me. And learning how to advocate for yourself, and not, oh, I'm not going to do that because I need to help somebody else. I'm not going to do that because this needs to be taken care of. It's like,
Right.
throw your elbows up, carve out that time. You're right. Drumming is definitely a different stage of life, but like joining that book club, it was important and nobody was going to hand that to me.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's another thing. Like, that's again how we start like peeling down the walls of the silos. Is like, you weren't like, I'm gonna get a babysitter and I'm gonna go do this African drumming thing, yada yada. Like, that iteration comes later. But like, right now, given the time and energy that I have, this is the thing that is important to me. And in order for that to happen, I'm gonna move all of this. I'm gonna handle the logistics so that I can have that piece for me. And then as that evolves over time into something else. But just the like, I love that message of like, really, because of everything we've talked about, like, it's easier for you to stay home. I mean, it's not easier on you, but it's easier if you don't need that space. It's easier if you don't throw your elbows up. It's easier if you continue to fill that time that you need and require for yourself with things that help other people move ahead. So the messaging that you have about your home and about your space and about taking care of yourself is like, I'm like sitting at the poetry circle snapping my fingers like, this is amazing.
I want to know, what do you do to fill up your bucket? Like, where do you find time for yourself?
That's a great question. I read a lot too, and that was something that I started doing in the pandemic because exactly same thing. Like, I had a bunch of kids at home and there was no one. Like, I don't have childcare outside of school. And so it was like, this is the only thing, like, I can carve out 20 minutes before I fall asleep at night and do this. And as my kids sort of have went back into school, and as my kids have gone, now I have 3 of them in full-time school, and my son, when he's in preschool, it's like I have these pockets of time, and it's only happened this past September, and I remember being like, well, what do I do now? And it's not what do I do now because I have nothing to do. It's like, what do I do first? And so for me, it was like, the first day that they were all gone in school, I was like, well, I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this and do this. And I was like, oh, no, 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 we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. So like, I take part of that time to do that stuff, to like help reset my house so that I do feel that calm that you're talking about, so that I am like, okay, I know that there's going to be not 19 spoons in the sink from breakfast for the next 6 hours. Like it's creating that space. Um, but I do love what I do, and I think that that's one of the reasons why entrepreneurship is really a great outlet for me. Is like I love the ability to pull my background into the work that I do. And I mean, quite honestly, starting the podcast and getting a chance to meet with other people and like build a community based on this shared experience of like, I haven't spoken to a single person yet who's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have all of this time for myself. It's so easy, so just like it's like you're saying, like having that community experience of we're all kind of in the suck sometimes. And we're going to do the things that we need to do to get there, but that we're all going through a similar experience, despite what an Instagram feed might look like.
Well, and this is a perfect, and I'm not trying to be cute, but this is a perfect dovetail into some of my other projects. Sorry, I was totally not trying. I love that. I actually love that word because I love it in so many different ways. But so Your Aligned Home one-on-one consulting that I do started a podcast, No Shame in the Home Game, with my co-host Lacey Tomlinson. And that brings the process that I do to the forefront. People can experience with participants who are willing to share what's not working in their home. And so people can actually listen and see, how do I do the work?
I love it.
It's been beautiful. And I just, again, I'm hoping to remove that shame element and that guilt element, and people can just realize like, yeah, we're all going through the suck sometimes, like you said. Yeah. And then from working with Lacey, she has her own podcast called The Middle, and she is on a chronic illness journey right now. From her experiences and work and mine, we are now creating a new project together, which is called the Joyful Support Movement, which we are so excited about.
Love it.
When you're in the suck and you don't see anyone else in the suck, you feel alone. What do you do? And Lacey's experienced this. I've experienced it. We know so many people. So we are creating a village of where's a safe space where you can show up and you can vent and you can do some constructive actions and know you're not alone and figure out what to do next. And it's not just to show up and complain. And it's not to say, oh, let's be overly positive and optimistic. And let's just it's not that. It is practical steps when you don't want to overexhaust like your friends or, your therapist or your spouse or, it's like, this is a place to come and do that work when sometimes things suck. And we're so excited for that.
I love that. So where can everybody find you? Because I hope your phone's ringing off the hook when people listen to this, quite honestly. Or your inbox. No one calls anyone anymore. That's a lie. I hope your inbox just explodes.
Thank you. So for the Your Aligned Home, that's the name of the website, my Instagram and Threads. Loving Threads, by the way. It's very erratic and random what I post. And then for the podcast, No Shame in the Home Game. It's the name of the website. It's the name of the podcast. And if anyone's interested in being a participant, there is a form on the website you can fill out. And then the Joyful Support Movement, we're creating it right now. There is a website and you can join the mailing list if you want to be notified. And there is an Instagram page, but we're just building it. So there's not a lot there, but very excited. And if you listen to the podcast, we'll do updates on the Joyful Support Movement. So.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was, again, a pleasure. And I could sit here all day and talk about all the problems that we are going to solve with all of these magical tools that we have in place. And these opportunities. So I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you doing the work to help people that just need that. They may need the big push, or they may need the little, like, pull the stick out of the dam and then just let things trickle along. I think what you're doing is incredible.
Well, right back at you. Thank you for creating Dovetail, for creating this podcast. Again, same thing. Thank you for seeing a need for something and going, we can do this better. And just having that positive and open space for people to show up and share their journeys. So thank you to you.
Yeah, well, thank you.